Let me tell you an awkward story. I was at a work barbecue with about 30 people, and a woman shouted across the room, "Why aren't you drinking? Are you pregnant?" I laughed it off, but I was actually mortified. My private news had just gone public in front of so many of my colleagues, and I wasn't ready to tell them. Later that night, a close friend pulled me aside and asked the exact same question. This time, I was thrilled to tell her, yes, I was pregnant. Same question, completely different outcome. The difference almost never comes down to what you say. It comes down to whether you're reading the room, shaping the conversation thoughtfully, and treating your conversation partners with genuine care. We're not really living in a golden age of conversation. In fact, I think we're facing a conversation crisis, from our social muscles atrophying during the pandemic to all of us being glued to our screens. It's more important than ever to connect with people face-to-face, eye-to-eye. In fact, of all tasks that humans do, conversation is reliably the one that we list as lowest in ability. There's incredible research showing that, on average, most people think they're above average at most tasks, but conversation is the exception. At Harvard Business School, I created and teach a course called Talk. I study conversation for a living. I've spent 15 years running experiments that focus on how people actually talk to each other. What works, what doesn't, and why. Most of us were never explicitly taught how to do any of that. We walk into what become high-stakes conversations without a plan. We ask questions that backfire. Even smart, talented people fumble conversations because at a critical moment, they didn't have the tools. That's not a personality flaw. It's a skill gap. Skills can be learned, and those gaps can be fixed. In the next hour, I'm going to give you the most comprehensive, practical framework for conversation that exists. You'll know how to walk into any room with confidence, answer questions without freezing, recover gracefully when you've lost the thread, and bring up tough conversations you might be putting off. None of this requires charisma. It just requires a system. I'm Allison Woodbrooks, and this is Masterclass. The jazz musician Wynton Marsalis once said, "Jazz is like negotiating change with style, and you have to make the most out of whatever happens because you're in it together." The same is true for conversation. We have a predictable structure, but we have to improvise within that structure. There are so many myths about conversation. Myth 1, you're either born with it or you're not. We think that conversation is a natural talent that you're born with, but the research is unambiguous. This is not the case. Conversation is a skill that you can build over time. Winging it feels natural and spontaneous, but a little bit of preparation and a lot of practice can go a long way. Here's another myth. You feel like you're not good at conversation. My students call this the myth of suckiness. Research has recently found that people underestimate their ability in conversation because it's so easy to think back on times when we made mistakes or blunders or said things that we wish we hadn't said. We forget that conversation is co-constructed, so when it doesn't go well, it's not your fault alone. Myth 3, that conversation is easy. Conversation is incredibly complicated. In fact, it's a profoundly complex coordination game. You have to read your partner, read yourself, read the room, the context all around you, and this is a tremendous cognitive load on our minds. Talk is the most rigorous, teachable, comprehensive framework for communication in the world, and it's an acronym. T stands for topics. We want to choose good topics and manage them well. Let's imagine that you're going to a party. You might feel a little anxious for a number of reasons. Maybe there will be people there that you don't know and you have to go through the dance of getting to know a stranger. Maybe there will be people there you do know and you're like, oh, I don't know what we're going to talk about. Many people feel like prepping topics ahead of a conversation will make the conversation feel rigid or scripted or inauthentic, unnatural, not genuine. This is not the case. Thinking ahead about your conversation partner and what you might talk about with them is an incredible act of kindness. And when the time comes and you raise this topic, it doesn't make it worse. It actually makes it more smooth, more enjoyable. It feels like a gift that you're giving to your partner in that moment. A is for asking more questions and better questions. Asking is a human superpower. Asking questions is the most direct pathway to understand another human mind, to understand someone else's perspective. You can focus on the opening question, like where are we going to start? Great. But what really matters more is when you listen to their answer, looking for the little golden nuggets that spark your curiosity and asking follow-up questions. Follow-up questions are superheroes. They show that you're listening to your partner, that you care to know more, and you don't have to prep anything. All you have to do is listen actively and carefully and feel curious and ask the next question. Every semester, I have a challenge for my students. I walk in with a $100 bill, waving it around, and I challenge them to persuade me to give it to them. They promise to invest the money and take all of the returns and allocate it to everyone in the class. They offer to come and babysit my kids, all kinds of wild and creative ideas. Eventually, somebody raises their hand and says, "May I please have the $100 bill?" And it's shocking how long it takes for someone to ask for it directly, in the same way that we don't ask enough questions in our conversations. L is for levity, using humor and warmth to avoid boredom and keep everyone engaged. Levity is so important, and I think many of us feel a tremendous pressure to be funny. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself, and it's also misguided. You don't need to be funny in conversation. We just need to make it fun. I want to share a story. I was at a dinner with several of my colleagues, so we were talking about work topics. It was getting very serious, and I have this amazing friend who said, "You know what I was thinking about on the way over here? If you had to remove one part of your body, what would it be and why?" It had an incredible effect on the conversation. Everybody had awesome answers and we had so much fun. And I remember it even to this day because it was really creative. And often in our conversations, it takes little moments of courage to go there, to go to an off-the-wall question, to go to a weird topic that's actually going to lift the conversation to a better place. K is for kindness. So caring for other people and making sure that we show it during the conversation. Kindness isn't a skill that you should think of as deploying or not deploying. It's more like, let's assume everybody requires it all the time. It means caring about your conversation partner and showing it to them. It's using respectful language. It's making them feel that they're worthy of care and attention. It's being receptive to their viewpoint even when they disagree with you. It's working really, really hard to listen to them and respond to them in that moment. And though kindness is a value that we learn from a very young age, it's actually incredibly effortful and a high-level skill to practice in conversation. You can be really straightforward with the signal of compassion and care. You can literally say, "I hear what you're saying about this. That must be so hard." That can really show them that you are hearing them and that you care. I know a lot of people feel a lot of dread and anxiety when they think about walking into a social situation or starting a conversation with almost anyone. I'm going to teach you some mindsets and strategies to enter any conversation with more confidence and comfort. How to initiate the conversation, how to circulate around the room, how to keep a conversation alive, and how to end it smoothly. How do I start a conversation? When we enter or are in a social situation that feels uncomfortable, there's all kinds of things we do to cope. We avoid the conversation altogether. We get pulled to our phone instead. It's easier to look down than to face your own discomfort with, hey, nobody's talking to me, or I don't know where to go here. Sometimes we'll leave the party feeling frustrated or embarrassed or ruminating about what didn't go well. The recipe for anxiety is uncertainty, so not knowing how it's going to go, how someone is going to perceive you, what you're going to say, and how it's all going to play out, and lack of control. Lack of control means you don't have perfect control over how it unfolds. I think let go of this desire to control the conversation and instead aim for co-creating and coordinating well with your partner, right? It's really not about you as an individual. It's about what you can achieve together with this conversation partner in this moment. Using the TALK framework, I'm going to give you 3 moves for how to start a conversation. Prepare topics, break the ice with levity, and make sure to ask follow-up questions. When it comes to topics, when you're going to a social situation, I want you to think about the people that you don't know yet and prep 3 to 5 topics that you could talk about with anybody. These are portable topics that make sense for anyone. What are you excited about lately? What are you doing this weekend? Best book that you've read recently? Have you watched any great movies? These sort of generalizable questions. Prepping topics is not manipulation. It's a gift. It's an act of generosity. In those moments when you might drift to the edge of the room or not initiate a conversation or stare down at your phone, instead you have this list of ideas in your back pocket that you can pull from that give you something that you know you can talk about. It brings us so much comfort and confidence and reduces our anxiety dramatically. I want you to imagine a pyramid that I would call the topic pyramid. The lowest level is where small talk lives. These are topics that you can talk about easily with anyone. Talking about the weather, the weekend, easy go-to topics for anyone. The middle layer of the pyramid is medium or tailored talk. This is where things start to get more personalized, more relevant, more exciting, maybe a little spicier, more vulnerability. And the very top, the peak of the pyramid is deep talk. We all know this feeling. It's like you're in this moment with a specific person talking about a specific thing that only the two of you can talk about in a specific way. Not every conversation needs to get to deep talk. Here's the most important thing about the topic pyramid. Conversations have to start at the bottom. They have to start in small talk, especially with people we haven't seen in a while or strangers that we're just getting to know. Your goal should be to ascend the pyramid to medium talk almost immediately. The way to do that is to ask follow-up questions, make a compliment, look for specific things about your partner that seem interesting, exciting, or maybe vulnerable. Share something about yourself, like, oh God, the last time I experienced snow, I was skiing with my grandparents in Utah. Give them something that they can latch onto to make things more personal and more exciting. I think part of the reason we start to feel very anxious and awkward in conversations is that we lose fluency. We have moments of disfluency, so ums, uhs, stutters, longer pauses. They start to make us feel very uncomfortable, and for good reason. It actually means the conversation's not going as well. To avoid those disfluencies and make our conversations feel smoother and more natural, you should aim to move up the topic pyramid so you don't get stuck at the bottom in the land of boring small talk where so many disfluencies are waiting for you. The next way to start a conversation is to break the ice. Here we're starting with L first. We can use levity. Levity helps us warm the conversation, warm the room. The first way that you can use levity is through self-deprecation. It's so easy to make fun of yourself about almost anything. If you're at a party, you could say like, ugh, I've been standing by the squawk for way too long. And literally anything that you can label about yourself, about, how uncomfortable you've been or what behaviors you've chosen to do up until that point will help break the ice and ground the conversation in a really fun and realistic way. The second is to make a sort of lighthearted observation about what's going on. Like, oh, look, there's always somebody at these parties that finds the dog, or it always seems like somebody wants to hold the baby, right? Like any little observation about what's going on is a great in and a great way to use levity to kickstart a conversation because the other people in the room are experiencing those things as well. The third way to kickstart a conversation using levity would be to use a callback. If you're in a room with people that you've hung out with before, you can call back to something that happened between you earlier in the night or earlier in your relationship. Callbacks are so lovely because they remind us of things we've experienced together before, and they're almost always fun. Asking might be the most powerful way to kickstart a conversation. It's the most common way that we start new topics is to say, like, what do you think about this? Or did you see this recent show? Or what have you been up to? It's also the way to dive deeper into topics, right? So as soon as you land on something that seems to spark your partner's interest, you can just keep asking follow-up questions. When things start to lag in the conversation, it's a sign that you need to move to a new topic. Research shows that people who ask follow-up questions learn more information and are much better liked. I'll give you one example. We studied about 1,000 speed dates, and we measured the number of questions that people asked on their date. People who asked more questions were more likely to get second dates, so much so that if you went on 20 dates and you asked just one additional question on each of those 20 dates, you would convert one of the dates into a second date. From one question on the date. When we dove deeper into what is happening here, why are questions so magical, we see that they show your partner that you care about them, that you're listening to them, that you want to know more about what they're talking about. Follow-up questions are really the secret sauce. Can you imagine if we taught every high school boy to ask follow-up questions? To ask anything. Here's a summary of what we just discussed and how you can start a conversation. Consider taking screenshots of these cards so you can have these reminders on hand in the future when you need them. Here's what I want you to do before your next social engagement. I want you to prep some topics ahead of time. I want you to think about a levity icebreaker that's going to help warm the room. And I want you to get curious so you're ready to ask questions from everyone in the room. What do I do when my mind goes blank? I'm going to paint you a scene. Imagine that you're in a boardroom and you're giving a presentation. You've been so excited, presentation's going great. All of a sudden, a very important person around the table asks you a question you weren't prepared for, and your brain goes into this sort of panic, frozen mode. When you feel panicked, there's a lot that happens inside, but there are also cues that leak out on the outside that people are really good at picking up on. When people panic, they tend to overtalk, so they start talking a lot and sort of stammering their way through because they don't know where they're going. They very quickly seem sort of insecure and unsure of themselves, and it's very perceptible by other people in the room. Here are some moves that can help when you freeze in a situation like this. Use levity to change your state and change the conversation. Ask clarifying questions, then create a structured response. When we think about changing our state, this is clearly a levity move. We're trying to move into the positive zone of emotions. In our scenario, when someone asks you a question you weren't expecting, even if you're taken aback, it can help to give them a sort of compliment in that moment. Like, that's a really great question. Let me think about that a little bit, right? Start from this positive place rather than like, oh my God, how am I going to respond to this? By responding in a positive way back to that person, it's going to help you feel better about it too. There's a really, really core finding here that when you feel anxious, uncertain, lack of control, panicked, Our body and our minds often tell us to try and calm down. That's a very strong human instinct. But it's actually a lot easier and much more effective to take that high arousal emotion, that high arousal negative emotion of anxiety, and try to reframe it as excitement. Excitement is also a high arousal emotion, and it's much easier to convince yourself that you're excited rather than calm. I think it can be quite helpful to use some verbal habits to help reframe that anxiety as excitement. And I'll give you one example. I was in an a cappella singing group in college. And like any audition or singing competition, it's the perfect storm for anxiety. So I started doing the strategy of trying to reframe my anxiety as excitement. And so it sort of forms this positive spiral, this positive feedback loop where it's like, okay, you reframe your anxiety as excitement, you then sing well, which then teaches you to get more excited about it the next time. Once I was in the group, we saw hundreds of students audition themselves, and it was so predictable. The students who came in and said, "I'm so excited to be here," almost across the board were the best singers. And the students who said, "I'm so anxious," and they're like freaking out, go on to not sing very well. Now, of course, people who are already good singers may be more likely to say they're excited, but in our research, what we have found is the opposite is also true. People who say they're excited are more likely to perform well. One of the most powerful ways that you can react to a surprising or difficult or scary question in the moment is by almost deflecting with your own question, by asking a clarifying question back. A clarifying question is so helpful because you're going to learn more about the asker's perspective and their motives and what they're actually looking for. It also buys you time. So just practically letting the other person speak again gives your brain time to catch up and start to formulate your response. Here's what that can sound like in the conversation. Let's back up here for a second. Can you tell me what exactly you have on your mind and what you're looking for? Or when you said this, did you mean this? I want to make sure I understand the question. Do you have something on your mind that you're looking for here? Finally, for the third framework, when you're faced with something you didn't expect in a conversation and you're not sure how to respond, a very clear structure can help. You can pull from topics to help structure your response in a really organized and compelling way. It also helps you feel prepared and confident because you know that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. Here are 3 strategies that you can use to structure your response. The first is recommendation, reason, and next steps. So a recommendation could sound like, I think that you should stop using social media because it's sapping all of your attention away from real human interactions. The next step is to develop a new system to keep your attention away from your social media apps. The second structure that might be quite helpful for you is top line, 3 supporting points, and the trade-off. Here's an example. I would recommend that you take a train instead of flying. Trains are safer, they're very fast, and they're very luxurious. The trade-off is flying might get you there faster, but the train will get you there in more comfort. My third recommendation is if-then. If-then helps us highlight trade-offs. So if you're optimizing for speed, then you choose the Ferrari. If you're optimizing for comfort, you might choose the minivan. Here's what I want you to do. Write down a question that you're afraid to answer, a question that you're afraid that someone will ask you. Then write down your answer, try and make it pithy and great, and then practice saying it out loud. What if I lose their attention? We all know this feeling. You're in the middle of a conversation and the pauses are getting longer. Your conversation partner's eyes are starting to wander around the room. They're leaning back. You're kind of stagnating on a topic for too long. Here's what's different when people are engaged. They ask questions. They raise new topics. They laugh heartily and authentically. The gaps between turns in the conversation are very, very short. They interject excitedly. We call them back channels. Things like, yeah, no way. They smile, they nod, they're into it. They make eye contact. It is so normal for people to lose interest in the conversation or let their minds wander. In my research, we checked in with people every 5 minutes during a conversation and asked them, were you listening attentively or was your mind wandering? And people self-reported that a quarter of the time their mind was wandering. When you realize that someone has lost engagement in the conversation, it's easy to feel guilty or panicked about it, like you did something wrong. But the research shows us that this is very normal. Our minds wander constantly in conversation, so it's quite common for someone to lose interest in a certain topic. It's not an indictment on you or a verdict on you. It's just how conversation works, and you should use it as a sign that you need to do something about it. We're going to talk about 3 moves that you can use when you start to realize that somebody's attention might be drifting away from the conversation. Within topics, we're going to focus on switching to a new topic, using it as a moment to go to a new pasture. Within levity, we're going to switch up the vibe. We're going to take that sort of malaise and boredom and move to a more positive place. And within asking, we're going to use it as a trigger for us to bring sincere curiosity, to make the conversation more about your partner so that they're pulled back in. When you feel like someone's attention is going elsewhere or they're losing interest in the conversation, you can move the topic to a new place. You don't need to apologize, you don't need to announce it, and you don't need to ask for their permission. You can just change the topic. One of the reasons people don't cover enough topics or don't switch topics enough is that they feel like it would be rude or intrusive or a little aggressive to move somewhere else. Like they need to honor the topic that they've been talking about. This is a misplaced fear. Recent research shows that people are about 3 times more likely to say that they don't cover enough topics compared to people who say that they've covered too many. What this means is when our interest starts to flag on a topic or we feel like people are getting bored, we should switch topics confidently and courageously. It's much better to move fast across topics than to stagnate and stay too long. You have a lot of options. You can move to something that's like closely adjacent to the topic that you're talking about, or you could jump to something else entirely. What actually matters more are the bridges from the current topic to the new one. So there are lots of phrases you can use like, oh, that reminds me so much of this, and then you move to a new topic. Or you can always use a question too, right, to move to a new pasture. So it's less about like how closely related is it versus how smoothly do we move from one topic to the next. One way to deal with this is to think of the topic pyramid. If you can't change the topic because you're talking about something important or something planned, you can change its depth. So remember the topic pyramid where you are at the bottom in small talk that's sort of shallow and unrewarding, and then moving up towards more personalized, more vulnerable, more spicy and exciting. This usually requires more emotional vulnerability, more personal question asking, but taking that same topic and moving to a place that's more interesting. If you feel like you're losing their attention or you've lost their attention, here's another thing that you can do. Reset the vibe. Use levity. Levity is like a mood elevator that takes you from bored and disengaged to a much more engaged and exciting place. Levity is like conversational CPR. When you're circling the drain or on the brink of death and destruction, levity is like coming in and bringing it back to life. That's because laughter is a great vibe reset. Let's just talk about the physiology of laughter. One good laugh can reduce your blood pressure for up to 45 minutes. It's incredible. Laughter seems to be this really basic, fundamental human thing that we do across all languages and all ages that has incredible benefits for our health and mental health. A good laugh can lift you out of that disengaged place very quickly. Another move we can use when someone has lost attention or lost engagement is asking. Asking takes passive listening and pulls them back in, makes your partner an active participant in the conversation again. When you're losing someone's attention, it's important to show them that you're not just broadcasting. You're not just like making a pitch to nobody, that you want them to be an active participant in the conversation, that you really want to hear their perspective. Listening is really hard. We've heard the phrase active listening for many decades. It's a phrase we all know. But active listening is sort of listening 101. It's good, it's important. What we learn from active listening is like, hey, lean in, make eye contact, nod and smile to make your partner feel like you're hearing them. That's really important. You want your partner to feel like you're listening to them. But what moves to listening 201, advanced listening, is not just using nonverbal cues to show your partner that you're hearing them, but actually using words, using verbal cues to show them that you've heard them. We call this responsive listening. Smiling, nodding, eye contact, even laughing, these things are pretty easy to fake. I can do those things and be thinking of my grocery list at the same time. Using your words to show someone that you've heard them is only possible if you've actually heard them. Here are 3 tangible things that you can do to be a great responsive listener. Affirm and paraphrase. So referencing back to something they said earlier, using a callback, paraphrasing something that a couple people in the group have said, asking a follow-up question because you want to know more. Naming what you notice is incredibly powerful because you are acting like a mirror for your conversation partner. You say things like, oh, you seemed really excited when you were talking about this, or you seemed a little uncertain when you were talking about that decision. Being a sounding board and naming what you see and hear in your partner is incredibly helpful to them. You may notice things in them that they don't notice in themselves. We hear a lot about the importance of perspective taking, understanding the perspectives of others. But research tells us that humans are really bad at guessing other people's perspectives. In truth, the only way to understand someone else's perspective isn't to guess, it's to ask for it. How were you feeling when that happened? What were you thinking about? What do you know? What do you think about this? These are things you can only do if you've listened attentively and used your words to show it. Here's what I want you to do. Write down a conversation that you had recently where you felt like you lost someone's attention. What was the signal that you noticed? How did you respond? And what's one move from this lesson that you could have used? Practice saying it out loud. Practice helps so much. And try using it the next time someone seems to lose interest in your conversation. How do I get out of this conversation? I want you to imagine a scenario that's familiar to all of us. You get stuck in a sidebar conversation with a family member at a holiday that you don't want to be in, or you're sitting next to somebody at a dinner party who's talking your ear off. It's all the same. How do you get out of a conversation that seems to be going on too long? It's not that they're talking too much. It's that the conversation that you're co-creating has lost balance. Remember, this conversation belongs to both of you, and you have the power to shape it. Here are 3 moves that can help: kindness, topics, and asking. Kindness means signaling care. Using topics means creating a smooth off-ramp. And asking means trying to use a question to close the conversation. When someone doesn't feel heard in a conversation, they often continue talking. They're like desperate for you to hear them, so they ramble on and they continue past the point and they keep going. This might be a problem with them talking too much, but it also means that you're not making them feel heard. So we need to use kindness to signal care and compassion and that we actually have heard our conversation partner. You can say, "It sounds like you're feeling this way. I'm hearing you say this." Like literally label what they're saying as a sounding board and give it back to them to say, "Listen, here's what I'm hearing from you, and it seems like you've been needing someone to hear that." When a person feels heard, they won't feel the need to keep talking, and the conversation can end naturally. Here's how you can create an off-ramp using topics. I want you to imagine a race car race. When the cars get into the final lap of a race, they raise the white flag to signal like, hey, one more lap to go. You can do the same thing in your conversations. We use these small cues with our words to signal like, hey, we're getting towards the end of this experience, and create a smooth ramp that like leads you to a natural ending. So something like, hey, this has been really great, or I loved hearing about that, or I really enjoyed our time together, are these signals that like, hey, this is about to come to an end. Imagine that you're in a meeting. Here are some things that you can say to create a smooth off-ramp. Before I let you go, I want to be clear about next steps. This time together has been so helpful, and I can't wait for the next one. These have the flavor of acknowledging that something great happened, and now we're looking forward to the next one. It creates a very clean sense of, hey, this was wonderful, and now we're moving on. If you find yourself in a place where you feel like you need to shift the conversation, but you don't want it to feel abrupt or hurtful, it can help to abstract away. So if you're talking about nitty-gritty things, you can say, what does this really mean about us? Or what does this really mean in the world? So trying to move from a sort of concrete place to more abstract and philosophical. When you're looking to close a conversation, you can also use question asking. This might be a sort of surprising way to use questions. Usually when we think about asking questions, we imagine them as opening up new pastures and diving into new directions. But you can also use them to close a conversation by signaling a sort of forward-looking view into the future. So something like, what are our next steps? Or what do you need from me going forward? Or when will I see you again? These are very clear indicators that the conversation is coming to a close, and you want to do it in a way that looks ahead to your next conversation. Here's how you tackle a hard conversation you've been avoiding. You have a conversation that you've been dreading. It's one that you feel like you should probably have, but you don't want to have it. It's a conversation with a colleague. You have to give hard feedback or maybe fire someone. It's with a family member that you have an issue with or a disagreement. It's with a romantic partner who you need to have a really serious conversation. It's totally normal to feel a sense of dread and avoidance about these big, hard conversations. These conversations often feel hard because they can easily unravel. And they unravel because both people walk in with their defenses up, like ready to sort of fight for their position and try to win. That is really dangerous and damaging. If you walk into a conversation like this with your mind made up, feeling certain, you've already stopped listening. Instead, you should let that go, set it completely to the side, and focus on learning as much as you can about your conversation partner's perspective. Here's how you tackle a high-stakes or pivotal conversation. Use a new framework called CALM and prepare for the conversation ahead of time. Let's start with the CALM framework. When you're tackling a hard conversation or a difficult moment in conversation, the CALM framework can help tremendously. C stands for confirm understanding. A stands for admit uncertainty. L stands for learn. M stands for make it human. It's so important to make sure that you and your conversation partner are on the same page and actually understanding what each other means. Here's what confirming understanding can sound like. You can say things like, I'm hearing you say this, is that right? Am I hearing you right? Am I understanding this right? You said this, did you mean this? So just checking in with each other and confirming that you're on the same page will make it feel less like an attack or like you're defending something and more like you're in it together. You can confirm understanding throughout the conversation, little moments of repair or questions or making sure that you exactly understood what they meant. Sometimes when people say things with emotion and if you feel surprised that they're expressing a certain emotion, it can really help to be like, I'm seeing that you seem a little bit upset about that, or, can you tell me more about where those tears are coming from? Really trying to understand their meaning of their words, but also their feelings and their beliefs underlying what they're saying. While we're having our conversations, it helps a lot to admit what you don't know. So admitting uncertainty. It can sound like this. I am sure that social media is bad for me, but I'm not sure what apps to get off of, and I'm not sure how to keep my attention off of the screen of my phone, right? So in the same breath, you can say something confidently and also admit what you don't know about it. Surprisingly, we think that just saying things that we know is going to be the most persuasive, but when you're on the receiving end, it's so much easier and more pleasant to hear someone admit uncertainty that ultimately those people end up being more persuasive. We're afraid that when we admit uncertainty, it's going to make us sound weak or like we don't know something, that we're powerless, that we're incompetent. Ironically, by admitting that you don't know something, it makes you seem more secure, more knowledgeable, like you have a more comprehensive understanding of the things that you know and the things that you don't know. The L in CALM stands for learn. This is so important. Our instincts when we confront tricky moments in conversation are to try and persuade the other person to agree with us, this persuasion mindset. That's not how you actually persuade people, by ramming your views down their throat. Instead, if we take a learning mindset, learning everything that they're feeling, everything that they've experienced, everything that they know, you're going to surface things that will help you understand where they're coming from. Going into a difficult conversation with a learning mindset and pushing away the instinct to be persuasive, ironically, will make you more persuasive in the end. The M in CALM stands for make it human. I think this is a sort of call to action for remembering that there's a human mind on the other side of every conversation. And your job is to connect during this conversation. In order to do that, you should share your humanity, your emotions, your lived experiences, your beliefs, and you should ask them for theirs. And when they do share the incredible gift of the way they're feeling or the things they've been through, we have to make sure to validate them. All feelings are welcome, not all behaviors are welcome, not all beliefs are correct, but all feelings and experiences are welcome. One of the strongest things that you can do in this Make It Human is dividing yourself into multiple parts. You could even say, like, as your friend, it makes total sense that you feel upset about this thing you just went through at work. At the same time, let's think about how you could consider doing it differently next time, right? Like, you can validate someone and also help them see it from a different angle in the same breath. In conversation, we're often torn between two goals, to be kind and to be honest. So we want to say the real thing, we want to say the hard thing, but we don't want it to seem cruel. The way to do that is validate other people's feelings and then find the courage to also get on the same side of the table as them and say the real thing. That's how you make it human. What can also help in these tough conversations is preparing ahead of time. There are many aspects of the context around the conversation that matter a lot. When you think about having a big, hard conversation, there are some things that you can control, like where it happens, when it happens, and how it feels. Because it's going to be a little bit sensitive, you don't want the conversation to happen in front of other people because the potential for shame and embarrassment goes up exponentially when there are more people around. So you want to have the conversation in private in a place where everyone feels comfortable and safe and like you're not taking advantage of them. You also want to make sure you choose a moment when there's enough time to really listen to each other. If you do it in this rushed, stressful situation in passing, you're not going to give enough attention to a topic that really deserves time and attention. It is always the case that if there is something bothering you that needs to be repaired, it's better to do it sooner rather than later. Not necessarily in the moment when someone is feeling angry and emotions are hot, but waiting and waiting and waiting and chewing on your resentment is a way to get to a really negative place in a relationship. So if you find that something is bothering you an hour later, a day later, it's really important to find the courage to go back to that person and express how you're feeling. When you're having a hard conversation or you find yourself in a tense conversational moment, it's so easy to snowball, meaning you start with one thing and then you start throwing in more. That escalates the situation very quickly. It's very dangerous. So anytime you're in a tense or difficult conversational moment, you have to work really hard not to snowball and throw in more issues. When you give a list of grievances to somebody, it feels like an all-out attack. It can feel good for you because you've sort of like organized all of your thoughts and put them in one place. But that means that you're not thinking about being on the receiving end of it. Receiving a list of grievances is overwhelming and will feel like an attack on their entire character. So you really should sort of pick your battles, pick the things that matter the most, and think about how to frame it in a way that can actually be received by the other person. Here's what I want you to do for this exercise about confronting these high-stakes, difficult conversations. Think of a hard conversation that you've been avoiding. Practice a way to validate their feelings before you say your piece. How can you confirm or affirm their perspective before you give them your perspective? Write a genuine learning question. What do you actually want to understand? How do I keep a misunderstanding from spiraling? We often confront these moments that we had no idea were going to happen or were coming our way, and they just pop up out of nowhere. You're riding in the car and somebody honks at somebody in the crosswalk, or your family member gets really annoyed with something that you did around the house, or you're out with friends and you do something on a dance floor that really makes somebody mad. You really never know when difficult conversational moments might pop up unexpectedly. Here's how to keep those moments from spiraling. Use kindness to repair the situation, or use a light touch of levity, and always ask before you assume. Often when we encounter small moments of tension and difficulty, we feel mad. We're feeling angry, we're feeling surprised. Their emotions have the risk of being hot and hard to manage. If we really want to channel our kindest selves, we have to be able to set aside those hot emotions to focus on the other person. Are they feeling mad? Are they feeling hurt? What's going on in their brain? One thing that really doesn't work is overreacting in the moment. Making an accusation, being defensive, yelling at somebody, that really can escalate. A lot of our instincts lead us to want to sort of solve it right in the moment. That can be quite hard when emotions are hot or running high. Often the better solution is to pause, take a break, move away from it, and come back to repair soon after. Small, difficult, tense moments in conversation, if left unrepaired, can build up over time and lead to resentment.
So there are two kinds of repair, short-term and long-term.
Short-term repair are efforts and things that you do conversationally in the moment or soon after that help to repair a rift or a tense moment. There's something sort of amazing about people who can see a very small, sort of tense problem and nip it in the bud before it spirals into a bigger problem. If you can acknowledge it and say like, oh, I thought maybe you seemed a little bit upset there, or I wasn't expecting that to be such a big deal. I'm so sorry. If you can cut it off and repair it right then and there in the moment, there's no chance that it'll spiral into something bigger over time. Long-term repair unfolds over a longer time horizon, so it might mean revisiting something much later and apologizing for it, realizing that something that seemed small actually became something bigger, and then repairing it later. For both types of repair, there are light touch repair moves that have to do with levity. These take some skill and you have to be careful in using them because you don't want to make a joke out of something that actually is hurtful or serious. You don't want to accidentally use levity to escalate the situation, but it can be used as a release valve to relieve some of the pressure. Sometimes when things happen unexpectedly, it can be really great for someone to say like, whew, that was intense, or geez, I didn't really know that was going to happen. Like make it self-deprecating, just sort of label in the moment that like, boy, that came out of nowhere, can really help to relieve some of the tension in a heated moment. As usual, asking is one of our greatest strengths in conversation, and that's particularly true in these unexpected, tense moments. It's so important to understand how your partner or the other person experienced that tense moment. How were they feeling? What happened? What did they see there? What was their understanding? What could you have done better in the moment? There's a lot to learn from asking questions about how someone else experienced a seemingly tense or difficult moment. People who are very good at noticing the misunderstanding and coping with it and doing repair often do three things. One, they're able to name it in the moment, be very concrete about the impact that it had, how it affected your feelings, their feelings, what the impact was, and then invite them to respond. Give them a chance to give you their perspective. When we have conflicts, it's almost never about the small thing. The dishes, the papers on the counter, the honking at somebody, these are just little representations of something deeper about what the relationship is and how you treat each other and how you cope with difficulty. And so they crop up as moments of like, well, how are we going to be with each other here? And how you interact in that moment, your ability to repair in the short term and the long term show you what your relationship is. There are many possible components of an apology, and some of them are more powerful than others. The components that seem most powerful from research are apologizing at all, doing it sincerely, and making a promise to change. And the more concrete that promise to change can be, the better. What the research tells us is that when someone apologizes, it means that it's very, very likely that their partner will also apologize, right? Because the social world is co-constructed and every conversation is co-constructed. When one person apologizes, there's almost always at least a little bit of blame in it for the other person as well. And it's it's much easier to admit that once another person has apologized to you. So they're very likely to be reciprocated, and reciprocal apologies mean, hey, look, we're back in this together. It's really quite powerful. I want you to think of a small moment that stuck with you and you didn't address. Write the short-term repair line you wish you'd said in the moment. Write the long-term opener if you need to revisit that now. Name the moment, the impact that it had, and the invitation to respond. Remember that friend who asked about my pregnancy? Here's what she did right. She pulled me aside so that I felt safe and connected. She asked me with genuine care about something that was really important to me, but also really important to her. She made me feel safe. She made it feel fun and exciting. That noticing is the beginning of a lifelong mastery of the skill we use more than any other, not just at work, everywhere. The dinner table, the difficult call, the moment someone you love needs you to actually be there. Start today. Start small. Now that you've been through this class, you are alive to the hidden world of conversation, and you'll start noticing these things. You'll start noticing when you prep topics and move through topics so smoothly. You'll notice when you've asked questions and when you haven't, when other people have asked questions and when they haven't. You'll notice and appreciate these sparkly moments of levity and warmth in your conversations, and you'll notice the effect that it has on everybody leaning in. You'll notice when people are extra caring and respectful, not just nodding and smiling along. Now that you're noticing all of these things, it opens the possibility of doing them a little bit better. And I hope that's what you'll do. We've recently been through a pandemic together. We're all pulled to our screens. We've got AI here and coming at us. We're living in a time when it's easier than ever to avoid human-to-human conversation. It's easier to look at your phone than to look at someone else's eyes and really listen to them. I hope by taking this class, you'll feel empowered and confident and hopeful that it's worth turning to our human neighbors and actually talking to each other. In a time of communication crisis, we still have each other. We'll always have each other. And developing conversation as a skill will always help us do the thing that makes us the most human.